Hello class, this is Miguel here. I'm with my client Pedro. We're going to be doing our final CAP assignment. My usual client Mackenzie could not make it. She sustained a back injury and is unable to do any of this at this moment. So Pedro stepped up today and he's going to help us out. For this first part, we're going to be doing resting heart rate, our blood pressure, waist to hip ratio, and as well as the Jackson-Pollock skin fold test on the male 3 sides, the armpit, pectoralis here, the abdominal, and the thigh muscle. So just sit down. We're going to start with the heart rate, resting heart rate. I'm going to find the radial pulse here. Get the clock going. Once I find pulse, I'll go 30-second count and then times it by 2. Alright, so we found pulse and time starts now. Time. So we got 43. That gives us about 86 for a resting heart rate. Now we're going to get his blood pressure. Using his brachial artery, we're going to there. There we go. On in, turn your arm. Here. Okay, so we got 122 over 86. All right, now we're gonna ask him to stand up and face camera this way. Arms up like this, cross your arm there. We're gonna be looking for his waist to hip ratio. So for the waist, we want to get the skinniest part of his trunk right here. For the hip, we want to find the hip bone and go around the hips, the outer part. So for waist, we're looking at 29-inch waist. And then for hip, and find the hip bone, bring it around the outer part. And we're looking 35-inch hip. Now we're going to be looking at the Jackson-Pollock 3-side skin fold test for males. We're going to start with pectoralis skin fold here. And if you bring in the camera, I have already pre-marked the designated pinch area for all 3 sites, and then also on the thigh. The way I did that was I measured from where there's the crease right here of the armpit all the way to the nipple, and we get about halfway. For the belly button, for the abdominal, from the belly button, I measured out about 3 inches and put it about a 1.5 inch. And then for the thigh muscle, I asked our client to locate with the measuring ruler the crease of his hip here, and I brought it all the way down to the patella. This is about halfway where we'll get our pinch. So let's look for measurements now. So we're gonna grab a little pinch, squeeze and pull. So here we have about 5 millimeters. Sorry. And we're gonna, from inside, just inside the belly button, pull. And we have about 16 millimeters. And now on the thigh, you're gonna pull, and we get about 8 millimeters. So that concludes the first part of the body composition. We'll see you in part 2. Welcome back, class. We're doing part 2 with our client Pedro. We're going to be working on the flexibility part now. We're going to be looking for range of motion in the shoulder, the elbow, the hip, and the knee. Once we get those numbers down, we're going to move over here to the YMCA sit and reach test. We got it marked at the 15-inch mark. We'll have his heels lined up here, and we'll have him reach twice to get some numbers. So first we're gonna come over here, and we're gonna get his shoulder flexibility. So we get the fulcrum lined up here with the shoulder. And then we are going to ask him to move his arm as far back as possible. And then my moving hand will move back to meet the arm. So we get about there. Okay. And we have about 160 degrees of range of motion in the shoulder. Now we're going to be moving to elbow flexion. And then again, we line up the fulcrum with the elbow, the non-moving hand with his bicep femoris, and then we are going to ask him to slowly move his lower part of his arm back as much as possible, and we are going to follow with the other hand. There we are, and it's about 59 degrees of motion for the elbow. Now we're going to move to the hip flexion, where we're going to line up the fulcrum with his hip, the non-moving part with his trunk area here, and we're going to ask him to move his knee toward his trunk, toward his abdominals, and so we ask him to slowly bend backwards as much as you can. Keep, there we are, and we are going to move with the leg. Match up with it, and we have about 47 degrees of motion. The last one we're going to ask to do is knee flexion, see how flexible his knee is. So we usually knee down. This is where we would want to start. We're at basically 180 degree angle right now, and we're going to ask him to move his knee up. We'll cook the fulcrum as much as you can backwards, as much as it goes, good. So as you notice, the non-moving one still stays with the bigger part of his leg, and then the fulcrum stays with the knee. And now we would measure what we got here. We'd want the moving hand to line up with the fibula, and we get about 144 for degrees of motion in his knee. Right, and then we're going to ask him to get up in the hand. We're going to conduct the YMCA test right now for flexibility. So what we want him to do is Legs nicely spread out. Heels right before the yellow line, the 15-inch mark. He's gonna have one hand over the other, and when he reaches, we're gonna want him to keep his hand on the ruler and see how far he could go. So first try, we got 10, and then go back, relax, and we're gonna have one more try. And 10.5, good? Okay, and then that conducts the part 2 flexibility for the final cap assignment. Hey class, so this is part 3 of the final cap assignment. We have the ACSM push-up test, the ACSM sit-up test, and with the metronome beat, and then we're gonna get his blood pressure and heart rate after working out, see if there's any spike. So first we're gonna do the push-up test. My client is gonna do a knee push-up due to fitness history and medical history. So what we basically want is knees on the ground, very flat back, shoulders tucked in. We don't want the shoulders too wide, and we want him to go as down as possible and back up. Down, chin to the ground, and up. So go ahead, Pedro. Knees on the ground. Okay. We want a flat back, which is good. And then go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. Client got 5. And then we're gonna move over here to the ACSM sit-up test. We're gonna have the metronome going to 40 beats per second. We already measured out the 10 centimeter line here. So basically what we want him to do here is sit. We want legs always on the ground. It's a common mistake for the legs that come up. We want fingertips touching the very beginning of the tape. And as it beeps, he goes up. When it beeps, he comes down. We want feet on the ground. We don't want one side to jerk more than the other to try to reach its final point. We want both arms moving, beep, both arms back. Because of his medical history, this might be very hard for him. So we're gonna see how many he could do or how long he could hold. So just try your best. So fingertips right behind the tape, good. And let the beat go for a couple seconds so you get a rhythm, and then you can start going. One, 2, 3. All right, you got 3. Very good. And now we're gonna ask him to come over here to get his heart rate after exercising. So once again, we're gonna get the clock going. So radial pulse. Get the clock going. When I find pulse, I'll start the count. Wait, found pulse? We got 48. That gives us about 96. And then we're also going to get his blood pressure to finish up there. Once again, we're going to line it up, break your artery. Squeeze. Here. Turn. Good. We got 132 over 96. And that concludes part 3 of the final cap assignment. Thank you.